That is not true now by what you say, Mr. Angie Lucas. And persons think that the policies, government policies that are being used in Africa today are outdated. Another leading reason why Africa is still lagging behind the rest of the world is because, accordingly, of the outdated government policies, technological innovation, industrial growth, and improved living standards are all fueled by government. But sadly, in Africa, the governments are not paying much heed to all this. The governments have implemented such policies that are not helpful at all the development levels. In the investment sector, African governments have invested way less than the whole world, where the whole world spends an average of 2.6 of their GDP in science and technology, research and innovation. The African governments have invested way less than this, which resulted in African nations lagging behind the rest of the world. Are we also, do you understand what we're saying here?
Yes, of course. Now the summary is that if you go to Asia, for example, because we are looking at Asia and Africa, if you went to the Philippines, you would have noticed that the government in Philippines, they prioritize investment in the technological world than in the system that was given to them by their colonial master. It's the same thing with China. It's the same thing you have with Japan. It's the same thing you have with India. And the list will go on until you must have exhausted the list of the countries in Asia. Now, the aspect of the policy in Africa and that which we have received is one of the biggest problems. In China, for example, protectionism is the highest thing the Chinese are working on. They ensure that whatsoever is imported, they know exactly what to do with that. They take more into your country than what they receive in their country. They protect their country. They protect what is happening from within. Now, the Chinese would invest more in sending somebody to spy in the US, for example, as was alleged by the Americans. The Chinese will invest more, like we had the case of Huawei, where the CEO was actually kept in Canada because it was said that every single Huawei product spies into the world which the Americans have and the Brits. Now, the major problem with Africa is that African leaders accept these things on paper, but they don't want to go by it practically. Now, we also have a dormant citizen within this frame of activities. Now, let's be fair and let's be factual here. I am assuming that right now I am the father of my house, and I have kids who are of age, and they have gone to school, and they have other things they want to do. No matter what they do, as I keep blocking them, there is nothing they will do and go above that. We have listened to people like Dr. Nick. He has talked about the aspect of our educational system for long. Mr. Ganade equally buys that same idea. There are others across the board in Africa who accept that idea. But what is the issue? We cannot rule out the fact that we have the colonial masters still at work. Firstly, let us see these things. Our countries are not yet independent. An independent person does not rely on the money that is printed by another country. If I were to extrapolate Cameroon from the countries which we are talking about, we do not have a currency of ours. So if you go to the market to buy, if you look at the right on certain product, the Americans have developed in technology, for example, and the Chinese have resorted in stealing that technology, as the Americans will put it. They send their students who go there to study and they go back home. If you go to other countries, when these people study, they go back home. But in Africa, what is happening? It is the vice versa. So, proponents of how much money is spent, they are right. But if you look at it, it is a system which we also have to start advocating, we have to start decrying that. Let the world, indeed, we talk about the world being a global village. Now, what is the reason for youths to put what we call right on certain product, and you refuse that this same product should not be in other countries? We know that if you come to Africa, in some African countries, we are quick to accept the last grade of whatsoever is being produced. If you look at even the technological world, if we want to have persons who have understood how to mount this microphone, we will go for persons who will mount this microphone only when the microphone is bad. We don't want to have persons who will mount it from when the chips are still good to give us reason why it has to speak the way it does. But the problem here is, if we should take leadership to action, we would have solved this problem. You cannot go and study abroad and what you have cannot be implemented at home. It will not work. And if we look at the way it is, for example, the Chinese, they have decided that the West is not going to dictate to them, because we are looking at countries who got independent at a similar time with us. If you look at the Singapore, if you look at Malaysia, if you look at the others, they all had their independence within the same time we had our independence. It is sad hearing that a people that were created got their independence from other human beings. We accept that for now. Now, when you look at these countries, at the time they were partly liberated like us. I think that would be a better phrase. At the time they were partly liberated like us, they decided to commit themselves more. Their citizens are upright. But in Africa, for example, especially the sub-Saharan African countries, which is the area which, if you were to look at how Africa is bad, it is this area, and they make up about 46 countries, with Cameroon included in this within these countries. We have decided that leaders who are here should be the one to tell us what system of education we want to study. And of course, if they cannot negotiate properly, they don't go into proper negotiation. The West does not give its technology for free. I tell you the truth, if we accept that we want to change the system of education, that we want to start coupling, let me take the case of the TV. The chips in the TV are not produced by us. And the persons who sell this chip, if they decide otherwise that we will not buy this chip, we will not buy the chip. So our leaders, they have decided to be persons who follow order. If you look at the last U.S. African Leaders Summit, if you look at the way African leaders went to the United States of America, they did not go as equals. A single country sits and calls a continent. And we have not heard a certain African Leaders Summit or African Business Summit where the countries in Africa would invite the Americans and tell them what they want. But in Africa, we are quick to move. France today calls us. The government of Cameroon have left for France, which is also one other trip that has to do with business and the rest. Now, why can't we sit and call the French people and tell them, right now, the technology that was used in building this particular bridge, we want to have 30% of that technology, else we will not do business with you. But we don't do those things. This is what the Chinese will do. The Chinese tell the Americans, this is what we want. The Americans are aware, because you cannot refuse what China also produce. We have ability and we have a particular capability which we should use it as our bargaining power, but we are not using it. So leadership in Africa is the biggest problem. No matter what we say, no matter what we do, if you go to the United States and you are the best surgeon, if you care, come to Cameroon and the hospital's facilities are not there, you will not work. There's nothing you will do. If you care, go to the United States of America, as it is said that the SIM card we are now using was actually made or developed by a Cameroonian, which we see today in some countries, they are using them. But the question is, have we accepted that the machine that produces this SIM card be put in Cameroon? They are produced somewhere else and they are ferried into the country. So why can't we accept that this thing should be there? So our leaders are not broke. The deals they go out there, they don't have the best deals for us. They have deals which are self-centered. They want to have the best from every single deal which they go out there to negotiate.